Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the AmplifyLTC Pharmacy podcast. I'm new. I'm a new face to this podcast. My name is Mark Bivins. I'm the SVP of Sales over here at RedSail, filling in for Francis. We talked to Chad Worz today. Honestly, you could just let Chad talk forever and you'll learn a lot. But we talked about kind of the recap of the fly-in that they just hosted. They always coordinate that. It sounds like they always coordinate that with NCPA. They were kind of the front side of it. NCPA was on the back side of it, all with the same message. Talked about like how, I would just say how receptive and what the message was around the fly-in. Really good listen there. He talks a lot about just reimbursement, different services, other aspects of, hey, look, while we are working on PBM reform, here's the things that we're going to beat the drum on as well to help supplement revenue in the LTC space. So really good podcast, and also just kind of what he's looking at and what he thinks that people should care about long term. So really good podcast. We'll take you there now. Thanks. We got Chad Worz on. He is the CEO of ASCP, everyone knows that as American Society of Consultant Pharmacists, but also is the host of Our Experience. Sorry, messed that up. But all right, thanks for being on, Chad. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, no, glad to be on.
I know you're kind of coming off. The one thing I wanted to like hit you with and get your perspective on is you're coming off we're probably a few weeks out now, but coming off your own fly-in.
Yeah.
From that perspective. So could you recap a little bit about how you felt about like what your message kind of was, how it's landing with the members of Congress and their staff and kind of what that's like?
Yeah. I mean, I think fortunately for pharmacy right now, there's a lot of alignment in our messages. So whether you're a member of NCPA or you're a member of APHA or a member of ASCP, we're all kind of aligned on the same messaging. And that messaging is reimbursement and reimbursement and reimbursement.
And reimbursement.
Reimbursement. So obviously there continue to be struggles with the PBM structure. We're working on those issues. We're trying to get some reform. It's kind of stalled a little bit in Congress. Lots of reasons for that. Some people think it's, the trying to make something perfect, and then that perfect becomes the enemy of good, and therefore nothing gets done. Some people think it's the strong lobby that comes from that sector of healthcare and that they're holding back reform. But it does tend to be a bipartisan issue. This is not an issue where we're lining up Republicans against Democrats or vice versa. This is an issue where we've got a lot of bipartisan support, that there's recognition that we can't, and in this effort to lower prices for people to get better access to products, we can't not pay the pharmacies and the pharmacists to do the work.
Right.
And ultimately, that's what we're dealing with. So that message, I think, resonated very well to our membership, to the people that came up to the fly-in. We had lots of meetings, as fly-ins often generate lots of meetings. We did it on the front end of a week where we had NCPA's meeting as well. So that whole week was pharmacists running around the hill, kind of talking about the same messaging. I mean, sure, there's nuance to community pharmacy and long-term care pharmacy, but by and large, it was, hey, we need PBM reform. We need some support. Right. We need some recognition that pharmacists are out there doing good work, and we can't forget about that in this whole process of lowering drug prices and things like that.
So you guys were kind of like, I think you guys were like a couple days before theirs, I think. So you guys were kind of the Marines that came in before, and then you had the rest of and then the rest of the Army kind of came in after that, like a little bit of a 1-2 punch. Did you guys coordinate that together, or?
Last couple of years we have actually coordinated together. So there is, again, you're seeing this alignment in pharmacy that we're all in this together, and our ability to move either agencies or move legislation through Congress has a lot to do with our ability to do it together. So we're really pushing hard to try to do it together. And I'll say, like, at the meeting coming up, the Amplify meeting, looking at the other speakers, you get that sense. We have speakers from SCPC, we have speakers from NCPA, we have speakers from ASCP, and you'll get the message that it's resonating in these different organizations.
That's good. What was your thoughts or overall in tell me to buzz off if it doesn't make sense. But how did you feel like that was received by the members of the Congress, the staff? What's that? And a little bit of like, What's that process? Not everyone's done a fly-in for real. What's that environment like? What's that process like too?
I mean, I think the first thing I would say to anybody that's not done it, and by not doing it, not coming here and visiting with your particular senator or congressperson, and I'm also speaking to people that may have never filled out one of those automated letter campaigns that come out of the different organizations as well.
Yeah.
You know, we've been very fortunate since I've been here. We've had two very good directors of policy. Both of them came from the Hill. One came out of a senator's office from Nevada. Our current policy director, Jim Lewis, came from two offices in Congress, Barbara Lee and Robin Kelly. They are they provide the insight to how it really works on the Hill.
Right.
So they're the ones that'll tell you that, hey, yeah, you write that form letter that is automated. It comes out of NCPA. It comes out of ASCP site. It seems like nothing. It feels like you're not doing anything. Even if you submit the letter as it's sort of pre-populated for you.
Sure.
They look at those. They look at every single one of those. They stack them up on their desk. They decide based on those stacks of paper whether they're going to take interest in this. So that's one thing that I would say just broadly to people is that, taking action, using your civic mind, taking action on things that are important to you is really important. The other thing I would say is when you come up to DC and you get to visit with your congressperson or your senator, it's super important that you do that because they listen to, you're a voter. And as silly as that sounds, that really means a lot to them. They want to talk to the voters in their districts, the people that own businesses in their districts, the people that live in their districts. They don't really want to talk to Jim or me or Arnie or any of us. I mean, they will.
That's fair. They will, but really their constituents inside their districts is obviously kind of table stakes to make sure, like, if you're going to go visit that particular, the representative, you better have people there that are from that region. And there's still this overwhelming, like, people don't know what long-term care pharmacy is. They don't know all the different aspects of pharmacy in general. So the staffers that are up there that are, they're young people, they're not as experienced. They need to hear it and understand it. They're framing it for the congressperson, whether you meet with the actual congressperson or not. I mean, I would argue that you're better off not meeting with them because they're just kind of a talking head and a handshake person. Right.
You want to deal with their peripheral brain that is healthcare.
Yeah.
But regardless, having that interaction directly is meaningful to them. They are thinking of you as a voter. They're thinking that, hey, this business owner employs 25 people in my district. They're all voters. This is important to my district. Right. I better pay attention to it. So, yeah, without question, one of the most impactful things I think you can do for your profession, your practice, is to come up to DC on one of these fly-in opportunities and visit with your congressmen and your senators. And then the corollary to that is that also allows you to invite them into your pharmacy or into your practice where you live and get them to come in and spend some time understanding what you do. Those are also opportunities that sort of spawn from these fly-in opportunities.
Yeah, and who you serve too. Like, I mean, let's think about how many, like, I'm not trying to like, but all of the, like, seniors actually vote more than most. Like, your patient base is, like, more active typically than your typical, I would just say, community-based pharmacy, where it's a much more diverse, broad group of folks from all walks. In the senior, I'm gonna just call it senior care kind of segment, in the LTC segment, you're servicing a lot of fairly active voters as well, along with typically from just the footprint from an LTC pharmacy perspective, typically employing more folks as well. So there's a whole host of reasons why they'd want to come and be on site in some of the pharmacies.
Yeah, and think about it. It's a great photo op. Again, it doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican, healthcare is healthcare.
Oh, yeah.
There's nobody that doesn't think we need to improve healthcare, make healthcare better. So they look at those as opportunities to stand up at a local pharmacy or in a nursing home or assisted living and be associated with the good work being done in their district. They want that, and then that offers the opportunity to educate them on what's actually done there and how it's impactful to people. So
okay.
Good opportunities.
Okay. Well, good review from Chad on the fly-in next year. Do you already have it mapped out? Like when? Or the dates?
We always have to wait to see what the congressional schedule is. That's always important.
See, it's the nuance Mark doesn't know.
That's right. But it's generally in March, April is when we would do it. This is a unique year. It's an election year.
Yeah. Okay.
I think a lot of the fly-ins were done earlier. We're going to get a lot, all of us, regardless of if you're in healthcare, we're going to get a lot of things coming out with regard to the election. So we call it silly season up here because everything just sort of pivots. Nothing really gets done, and everybody's focused on whether or not they're going to win their election or not.
Right. Are they leaning on, not to get too specific, I guess, but like, are they leaning, and when I mean they, I mean the representatives or the staffers that work for those representatives. Is there a little bit of like, guys, there's a lot going on between like external crises and either Israel, Palestine versus Ukraine? Is there a little bit of like hemming and hawing because it's, hey, look, we want to, it's just that there's just these kind of this other stuff going on, and you guys, a lot of the message I think is this is gonna become a crisis if you don't act.
Yeah, I think there is. Obviously, Congress is distracted by all kinds of things.
Sure.
I mean, even at our fly-in, we had Representative Harshbarger from Tennessee, who's a pharmacist, come speak to us, and we held an event for her. She had to move it last minute by an hour because they were having a special security meeting about what's going on overseas in the Middle East. Yeah. So those things are always distracting. I think the other thing to think about in an election year is you're going to have winners and losers that are in this Congress.
Yeah.
They will pass legislation by the end of this year. Some of it gets passed post-election before December 31st. And in that lame duck sort of period is when some people will say, you know what, I really believe in this pharmacy thing.
Let's go do it.
I didn't really talk about it because I was afraid it was going to get me elected or not get me elected. But now that I'm on my way out, I'll vote for it, or vice versa. So there's that opportunity. We always pass in kind of an end of the year package to finance the government. There's a couple healthcare bills that are on the horizon by the end of the year, and we think those are vehicles for some of our legislative opportunities. So the equitable community access to pharmacists, arguably the provider status language on test, treat, vaccinate. We think that's got legs and a vehicle to get passed. And we think a lot of this PBM reform and transparency bills that are out there have an opportunity to get passed.
Okay, cool. Good. All right. Well, that's the review from the Hill.
There you go.
From Chad. Let's you mentioned it, and I want to pull on that thread a little bit. Test to treat, provider status, things like that. What are you looking at from your perspective, like from ASCP's perspective, kind of wants, needs? Where are you guys looking and guiding the conversation around that?
Well, I think like everybody else in pharmacy, we're looking for how do we provide more services and how do we get fairly reimbursed for the services we provide.
Sure.
I think prior to COVID, your garden variety long-term care pharmacy was in a more supplier relationship with nursing homes, that we buy the vaccine, we ship it to you, you store it and vaccinate your people, on your own at the nursing home. What COVID taught us was that in that particular emergency, the nursing homes came to us and said, hey, we can't do it.
Right.
You guys have to do it. So I felt like that was a profound opportunity for pharmacy. Our community pharmacists had already been vaccinating and doing it in the community settings. This pulled long-term care pharmacy into the responsibility for vaccination. And coming out of it, you now have the opportunity as a pharmacy. If you participated during COVID, you became a Medicare provider as a pharmacy. You got all of your pharmacists or some of your pharmacists and staff as certified immunizers.
Right.
And we come out of it in a period where you've got a recommendation for a high-dose flu vaccine, which is a $130 vaccine. You've got the COVID vaccine annually, which is a $130 vaccine. You've got RSV, which is, I think, a $250 or $300 vaccine.
Yeah, it's like a $300. Yeah.
And you have all the other ASIP recommended older adult vaccines, things for shingles, that are all, and I don't mean to frame this as revenue opportunities, but that's exactly what they are for pharmacists.
Yeah. It's outcomes plus the appropriate amount of revenue is kind of what everybody's asking for, I think, from that perspective.
You're getting the opportunity to do what you always do and, purchase wisely and make a little bit of money on the product. You're also getting the opportunity to get reimbursed for the administrative act of applying the vaccine. You have a lot of flexibilities in that. So if I'm a pharmacy, a long-term care pharmacy, and I'm responsible for the vaccine at the nursing home, I can send my people in to do it, like on a clinic day.
Yep.
I can bill for that. I can contract with a third party that might meet the vaccine at the facility and provide the vaccines. If I'm really capable, I might time my vaccines to arrive at the facility when my consultant pharmacist is there and they can provide the vaccines.
I see.
And then finally, I can contract with that nursing home for the nurses to be the last mile of the vaccine process. And I can bill for the vaccine and the administration and then reimburse the nursing facility nurse for doing the injection and reporting the information back to the pharmacy.
I see.
There's a lot of value in that.
Okay.
There's value in it from the perspective of pharmacies having an opportunity to create a revenue stream where they didn't have one necessarily before. And two, it does a lot for public health because now we've got a full circle of the vaccine getting ordered, patient-specific, going to the facility, being administered, getting that information back from the facility, reporting it into the state immunization information system.
Right.
And now you've got sort of a wraparound procedure that lends itself to better healthcare. So when that patient, let's say they're a rehab patient and they go home and they end up in the hospital again, they end up back in this nursing facility, we can see what their vaccine history is.
Right.
Now we see that, hey, last time they came through, they got their flu vaccine, or last time they came through, they didn't get their flu vaccine. So it just from a public health perspective makes a whole lot of sense to lay the responsibility of vaccines in the hands of the pharmacies, just like we did in the community. So we think it's a huge opportunity. The test treat component of it beyond vaccination is just more opportunity for pharmacists doing more things in these settings like assisted living and nursing homes, that there are reimbursement mechanisms for, we get officially into the Social Security Act as a provider. So in that sense,
right,
it's provider status. It's not the brass ring of provider status. I think your average pharmacist would say, oh my God, we finally got it. But it's the foot in the door.
Okay.
And then allows us from an administrative perspective to go back later and say, you know what else we can do? We can manage chronic disease. We can manage diabetes. And we're already in the Social Security Act. We're already providers. We don't have to go through this, what has amounted to ultimately a decade-long process of trying to get pharmacists as providers. So we think it's a lot of opportunity on both the pharmacist and the pharmacy end. Across the board.
Yeah, kind of two things there I glean from that is one, it really can help deepen relationships too with the facilities you have.
100%.
Straight up, like the whatever flavor you kind of described a couple of different versions of it, whether you're really engaging the staff to do their portion of it and being able to reimburse them for that or not, or either one. It talked about like really deepening relationships from that perspective, but also too, what I guess the question I have, a follow-up question for that is your perspective on, probably to me, it creates a little bit of a deeper relationship even with your public health entities in your local regions too.
100%, for sure. They're under, they're trying to comply with guidelines. They're trying to improve access. We did a lot at ASCP, since COVID in some weird areas. Like we did a USA Boxing grant. Like, people were like, I don't understand. How does USA Boxing match with, older adult pharmacists?
Yeah, please say more.
Right. But USA Boxing came to us and said, you know what? At our boxing events, we have a lot of moms, dads, grandfathers, grandmothers that come to watch their kids box. We have a lot of officials. We have a lot of people that work on these events that are all in this age range of needing the vaccine. And they're also a relatively underserved group. I mean, it's a lot of Black people, a lot of people from the Hispanic communities, and they didn't feel like they had the access points that maybe everybody else did during COVID for the COVID vaccine and some of the other vaccines. So it was an opportunity to meet people where they were, where they're comfortable at these events. And at least, even if you didn't get them to get the vaccine there, you had the conversation and maybe they thought about it, they saw their friends getting it, and they said, you know what, this is probably right for me. I'm going to go to my local pharmacy and get the vaccine. So it was really a nice opportunity from our perspective to highlight a role that the pharmacist can play, particularly long-term care pharmacies and pharmacists could play, that the public doesn't see. It was a very public sort of endeavor on our part, so that people could recognize, oh, this pharmacy, I don't even know who they are, but they're here at this event. I'm going to talk to them. Oh, you take care of people in assisted living and nursing homes. Like, just that aspect of public relations is important as pharmacists become more and more at the top of their license, providing services that maybe people don't think about. Getting away from the counting tray and the filling of a bottle sort of mentality that a lot of people have. So we thought it was impactful from that standpoint.
Okay, cool. So from that, I want to kind of like educating the public on just what an LTC pharmacy can do is kind of, I imagine, kind of challenging at times. You don't, to me, start to know about it till you almost need it. Almost is kind of the way and now you're right about that in the sense. I do think COVID, even in the LTC world, totally brought out that a little more in the forefront to be like, to have that dialogue and have that conversation with either your public health or your local, even your legislative representatives too, to be like, hey, look, we can help with this. There's a lot of seniors you got to go. I remember seeing a lot of cool stories around some of these LTC pharmacies that was just like mass immunizing, like huge swaths of seniors and facilities and homes almost all at once. And at times, certain other pharmacies who may have been their competitors couldn't help them at times, and they could. So I remember that it's like really a deepening, but also like a really nice public going message to drive awareness.
Yeah, it's important from a variety of perspectives. We have to get people to understand what pharmacists are doing. Some of that, the elephant in the room of the older adult population is going to do some of that for us. Now we're talking to Congress people and people on the Hill that say, oh, yeah, my grandmother's in a nursing home, or my mom is in assisted living. And they're starting to sort of connect the dots between, oh, yeah, you're right. She doesn't go necessarily to the corner drugstore. She has a pharmacy that comes in and they provide these services. And you're almost trying to create in the beneficiary, if you want to look at the population that way, this concept that why does my mom in a nursing home get compliance packaging and a pharmacist looks at their meds and they get emergency deliveries and 24/7 service, but I don't get that at home. I want that. So it's just feeding this movement that, hey, there are advanced pharmacy services that pharmacists can provide, community pharmacists, long-term care pharmacists can provide, that are going to help you age in place, because we also know the other elephant in the room is there's not a single person that's ever raised their hand when I've said, who wants to end up in a nursing home? Nobody wants to. So if they knew there was services they could get at home, again, compliance packaging, having a pharmacist review their meds, that would help keep them out of that situation, they would be like, why am I not getting that? I need that. I want that.
Yeah.
So it's helping us push some of these higher level service oriented reimbursement methods that pharmacists should be getting to take care of this older adult population that's coming.
Right. And part of what y'all are doing, which is super important work, is there needs to be a revenue model to support it.
That's 100%. We can't do this for free.
No margin, no model, right?
That's right.
It really is. And that care is so important when you're on, on 2 meds, but also when you're on 8 to 12 and you're
well, and I think the other thing that's in the background right now with all that's going on, the IRA and the 10 drugs that are being negotiated, the insulin cliff that's happened, is that we have to have tougher conversation with each other as pharmacists and pharmacies, that we don't need to apologize for the price of a particular therapy. Right. Our job is to make sure you get the right one. If it's my mom or dad, I want them on the right medication. It doesn't matter to me if it's a $10 generic or $1,000 once a week injectable, which are so popular right now. Yeah. My decision making is about you and your setting and what is going to be best for your quality of life. So if you live at home and you're type 2 diabetic and you need to lose some weight, you better believe, I think, that these GLP-1 medications are opportunities for you. I mean, my dad is in that situation, and I'm like, if he had to deal with insulin, that's probably too sophisticated for him to really manage effectively on a day-by-day basis. So he benefits from a once a week medication that gets him to his goal, hemoglobin A1C.
Right.
And we as pharmacists can make those recommendations, and we can push on the insurers to get them the right medications. Now, if you're in a nursing facility and you have 24/7 nursing care, and they can manage the insulins or whatever you need from a diabetes standpoint, then maybe that's the right opportunity for that person in that setting. So pharmacists have to kind of, I've been saying this, go back and do pharmacy again. Like, we're here to make good decisions about your medications. Sometimes that decision is, again, based on cost, because that's important to you. And sometimes it's based on convenience and success, because that's important to you. So we've got to push those levers from a pharmacy perspective. And to some degree, it gives us a little bit of leverage, very little, but a little bit of leverage back against those PBMs and those insurers, because we can make articulate arguments on, hey, I know that this isn't your formulary drug, but this person can't do it on this drug. They need this particular drug. So we have to start doing that and being unapologetic about it.
Yeah, no shit. No, yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
I almost said
That's
it.
a real answer.
I was almost like, my bad. Kevin's over here looking at me going. We're allowed. I'm allowed one F word. No. Okay. All right. That's all right.
I love it. It's great.
Sorry, that was a very human reaction to everything. I felt it. I felt what you were saying is what it was.
That's awesome.
Gotcha. Sorry, I just got told my F count. My F word can be 3, and then we have to do something else with the podcast. So. All right, good stuff. But I totally agree. The reason I had that visceral reaction is because I've seen it play out just in family, in general, just where you're right about how complex like a daily or even like constant measuring plus daily, like it could be really complex to manage diabetes. It just is. And then if you can simplify their life with, okay, you just do this every Tuesday but obviously put other playing resources and things in place around it. I've watched someone go down to like completely lowering their A1C to the target goal, but also like lowering their blood pressure, lowering like all these other like super positive side effects around it. And they had to fight tooth and nail to get access to it. And it was the appropriate thing. It really was. It really was. It cost a little more, and you're right about that piece of it. And I'm not saying it's a wonder drug by any means, but man, I watched someone go through the battle of trying to even get it paid.
Yeah,
get it paid for.
It's frustrating,
so.
and it creates whenever you're dealing in the DC area with legislators, it does create agencies. It creates inequity. I go back to the Aduhelm, which was the first Alzheimer's product. The FDA approved it. Super expensive. A lot of people questioned whether it was worth it or not. But the bottom line was you approved it and you put it on the U.S. market.
Right.
And CMS and Medicaid and Medicare were like, whoa, we're not paying for that. Like, you got to get a brain scan and you've got to be enrolled in a drug study in order for us to pay for it, for you to get it. Which, again, I'm not arguing the merits clinically. All I'm saying is the government agency responsible for approving it and putting it on the market did that. Right. So now the wealthy person that's 57 in, I always use Phoenix, Arizona. I don't know why. In Phoenix, Arizona.
It's Scottsdale. It's what it is.
They're wealthy, yeah. That person is scared to death that they have early Alzheimer's, and they're going to buy that drug because that's the only opportunity they have to do something about a really scary condition that they know they have.
100%.
That's not equitable when everybody else can't do that because your payer happens to be Medicaid, Medicare, has decided that they don't believe in the drug. Now, they might be right, but what if they're wrong?
Yeah.
And again, you've created this sort of inequitable environment. And those are decisions that should be left to physicians, pharmacists, clinicians, and patients, and not left to people writing the check to cover it, because ultimately they put themselves in a rationing situation. We're rationing this product.
Yeah.
And you've kind of seen it played up a little bit less, but maybe a little bit more upfront with the GLP agonists, because they're trying to ration this.
Yeah, it's kind of played out in the public view. It really has, right?
Yeah.
It really has. So, and then you also got the dialing in of like medical loss ratio as well. I think that's kind of like over the last like few months made a lot of headlines just because you've seen an uptick in either procedures or whatever. It's just starting to see it, and it's hitting in people's and stock prices as well. So it's just those two things have played out in the very public view now.
Yeah. I remember a really funny article. It was in like the USA Today, and it was about one of the airlines had calculated that if they allowed, if we had better access to these GLP, and I know I keep talking about this drug class, but it's such a good example. But if we allowed access to this, that the average American would lose like 19 pounds, and they would save like, $500 million in jet fuel.
Oh my, just in jet fuel, right?
Just in jet fuel. And I'm like, I can't believe that this is a news article, because by and large, you can't make those are wild assumptions.
Oh, I know.
But
like the extrapolation.
I can't believe
Yeah.
that the debate playing out in the media has an article about saving jet fuel, how it's good for the climate if more people are on this particular medication class. I thought it was, it's funny. And then you see some other articles that say, hey, hold on, we don't know about all the safety effects of these medications either. So that there's a lot of, I don't want to call it misinformation, but there's a lot of information warfare being played out in healthcare media and major media around these things to shift people one way or the other on utilization patterns. Again, something that should be at the heart of what pharmacists do. We should be talking to you about your situation and what drugs are right for you. It shouldn't be played out in major media. It shouldn't be played out in corporate offices around the country. It should be a patient-centered decision. Yeah,
the public is finally getting a little bit of the door cracked open to a lot of broader other types of conversations that are very similar to this. It's just a different therapy, and it's just not as well known, and it's not as, I guess, I don't know, as celebritized or whatever that would be.
Sure.
To that, so that makes a ton of sense. But well, man, that's good. I'm watching my clock here too. I don't want to take up too much of your time. What else do you think? So I'll pivot a little bit now. What else do you think for ASCP, long-term care pharmacies in general, whatever? What should they be looking at in? I'm going to say the rest of 24 into 25 that you got your eye on that you think maybe other people aren't talking about, maybe.
I think it still comes back to what has just emanated to the top of everybody's priority list, which is reimbursement. And I'm not specifically talking about PBM reimbursement. I'm talking about reimbursement for services, doing the comprehensive medication reviews, doing MTMs, dispensing medications, billing incident to physicians. There are so many opportunities right now that sort of exist that are little slivers of revenue that we need to take advantage of as pharmacies and as pharmacists to piece together enough of a business to survive while we work on these bigger issues. I mean, some people will say that, PBM reform is great, but it's going to be 2 years before it really takes effect. Well, there's pharmacies that might not make it for 2 years. Yeah. So how do we educate them and show them what other pharmacies are doing to make ends meet in the short term that are real opportunities? And vaccine's a good one. Providing that service is a good one. Looking at other things, this ability to contract with physicians, I think, is another one that's out there that has some opportunity, primarily because during COVID, there were flexibilities to how that work could be done. Before COVID, if you contracted with a physician to bill incident to, so this means you bill your services through the physician who uses their billing apparatus to bill, the payer or Medicare. That physician had to be in the building with you and had to be readily available to you. And if they saw that patient and billed on that patient, then you weren't allowed to bill on that patient. So if you put that in the long-term care space, I'm a consultant pharmacist, I'm in a nursing home. If the physician's there the same day as me, they're likely seeing the patient and billing. So I'm not going to have a great opportunity to bill any services. Well, during COVID, they relaxed that. They said, now they don't have to be in the building. You just have to be able to get a hold of them. Right. Well, that changes everything. Now when I'm in the building, I can see a bunch of patients. The physician's not even coming in today. As long as I have access to that physician, I can bill some of these services. I can start doing things that maybe traditionally were nursing functions in nursing homes because they're understaffed, they can't do it, and now I can do it and get paid to do it through the physician. So those things have happened, and it's about amplifying them and getting them to more the mainstream and explaining to people how that can work. Now they've put a time limit on, they roll that into telehealth. Okay. So they put a time limit on some of that ability that will end at the end of this year. So right now you could bill, some of your general services through the end of December of this year. You can do that. After December, we'll see what they continue to allow. In the meantime, they have allowed behavioral health indefinitely. So if you're managing psychotropic medications, if you're, working on the antipsychotics that are under such scrutiny at nursing homes, those are all services that you could be billing through a partnership with a physician. So the rest of the year, we're going to be talking about all aspects of how the business works, whether that business is a consultant pharmacist, whether that business is a pharmacy in the long-term care space, and how it all works to get more people interested in doing it, because A, it helps their business, B, it moves the whole movement of pharmacy forward in terms of what we're doing and what we get paid to do.
So that's probably a conversation everyone's got to get comfortable with having with, is that medical director? Is that where does those conversations start with that? And the nice thing is it does sound very win-win. It really does.
Yeah,
But
sure.
I was I'm assuming everyone's got to get really how long it takes just for anybody to get hyper comfortable to go to a medical director to be like, hey, look, this is what I can really do.
Right. I would go back, and I have, my history in pharmacies long. I started as a 14-year-old Stockboy in a community independent pharmacy. So, and I remember there was always physicians that we worked with that were local that called in a lot of scripts or sent patients. And pharmacies and pharmacists need to be thinking about those relationships. Who do I work well with? Who could I try this with that would be accepting of this? Because to your point, it's a win-win. You look at the two areas that have been just beat down by PBMs and insurance. It's primary care physicians and pharmacies.
Right.
And both of them are under the same pressure, which is we want you to do it faster and we want to spend less time and we need to do more of it in order just to tread water.
Right. And the entire time the insurance is and I'm going to pay you less. Right.
Right. And then I'm going to pay you less. So if you can go to a physician and say, hey, listen, I think the services I'm helping you do in the nursing home, I can bill through you. You're going to make a little bit on it. I'm going to make a little bit on it. This is money that neither of us was making before.
You're not getting now. Right.
And it's going to help us both survive and really help both of us enhance our practice level and what we're doing for patients. So it's just getting that word out and getting some of that first pilot, that first attempt by somebody to do it to where they can then see how they can scale it. I mean, our pharmacies and pharmacists that are particularly in group practices, they know how to scale.
Sure.
Yeah. They know how to build
that's
their
kind
business.
of the name of this game for the most part. Yeah.
So just getting them the recipe so that they can do it and then scale it is what we're really going to try to do.
Yeah, it sounds like, hey, get the first package you're comfortable with. I don't mean to call it a package, but the solution set, whatever, the services you're comfortable with that you feel like, hey, look, I already do these. I do these well. You're benefiting from this already from an outcomes perspective with your patients. Well, let's bill for these.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
You can bill for these. I don't know if you know that. You can. This is how you would do it. And then here's the shares. From
absolutely.
That perspective. Okay. That's good. So that's the drum you're beating for the remainder, I guess.
And I like that example also because it's that other. It's we get into these this is a clinical example, this is a operational example, but that's another good example. Like in long-term care settings, nursing homes in particular, we package medications, we make it efficient for the nursing staff. There are opportunities to get better reimbursement because of that. We don't get that on the community side. But there are people on the community side that are every bit as eligible and as needy as those in the nursing home. So how do we get payers to recognize that, hey, by syncing up the meds, putting them in these compliance packaging, I'm helping this patient better manage their healthcare conditions. But it's not free.
Yeah.
I had to buy equipment.
It can't
I
be.
have to put all this effort in. So what are you going to reimburse me to do that in this population that is at risk? And maybe that's my last sort of point in all of this is that we tend to think everything in the present day. We have, and you'll hear me say this a lot, but we have 57 million people over the age of 65 today. By 2030, we'll have 74 million people. We have 1.7 million nursing home beds. Unless some dramatic change happens in public perception, cost of nursing homes, or governments willing to invest in the nursing home space, which I don't see. I don't think anybody does.
Right.
We're still going to have 1.7 million nursing home beds in 2030. Those nursing home beds are going to be for people that are transitioning out of the hospital or that have advanced psychosis or dementia. That means that the person that may go to a nursing home today, right now, is not going to have that opportunity in 5 years. They're going to be at home. So how do we wrap services around that? How do we pay for those services so that they can do that? That's what they want anyway. How can we do that to make this system work? And that's, maybe that's not a 1 year goal, but that's like a 3 year goal.
Yeah. It's a really good long-term view of it helps drive even the conversations you're having at legislative or even local levels too. But especially from like representatives and things like that, it makes total sense to be like, hey, look, you have those facts, figures. Hey, this is what it looks like 5 years from now.
Right.
This stays static.
And again,
makes total sense.
As I mentioned earlier, it's starting to resonate because they're starting, you have people on the Hill, even the young kids that work in the offices are saying, oh yeah, my grandmother's doing that right now.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you've bridged the gap between what they know and don't know about your sector of healthcare. And it helps.
Yeah. Man, I kind of want to do that. We're kind of doing this out of order, but like, you just said something kind of cool that I wanted to like get you to expand on about your journey of starting in an independent community pharmacy at 14 stock and shelves. It sounded like, what was your journey to get Chad Worz, the CEO of ASCP?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's serendipity, but like I got the job at the pharmacy at 14 because my best friend was working there.
Right.
I had nobody in my family that was in healthcare. It was a community pharmacy. It's the sort of the romanticized version of the community pharmacy, family owned.
Yep.
We did home health. They actually, what's really interesting is they ended up cornering the vaccines to physician's office model out of this little independent in Cincinnati. And that's where they really drove their business beyond just the local pharmacy aspect. But I got exposed to all kinds of things. Like as a delivery driver, I remember driving medications to patients that because of the time that they grew up, they would make me follow them into their basement. They would open a coffee can, they'd reach in and pull out $20 bills and pay me for the medications in cash. Right. Like I got so many like interesting experiences through pharmacy that have kind of shaped how I look at things. It's just been, it's wonderful. I'll always say it's a great time to be a pharmacist because I think pharmacy is so much fun and there's so much opportunity. Just like the population shift. I mean, there's no healthcare professional that is in line to help people better than a pharmacist or a pharmacy. I mean, you have 75 million people that take, to your point, 8, 10, 12 medications. Somebody has to navigate that. Yeah. Somebody has to manage that. And we're tooled to do that. So throughout my experience, I worked there. I was actually, that pharmacy sold to CVS. So I got to experience what that felt like. Yeah. I was hired when I left. I'm an old school pharmacist. So I was a 5-year BS. I kept going and got my 2-year PharmD, but I'm old school in that sense. So I got to work as a pharmacist while I got my PharmD.
While doing
and then when I left pharmacy school, I was told, well, you can't get a clinical job because you didn't do a residency. And I'm like, I've been in this school for 7 years. I want a clinical job. And a long-term care pharmacy was looking for a PharmD to hire, and I hit it off pretty well with that owner and got that job, only to find out I got the job because they didn't have any PharmDs, and this 14 facility nursing home group would only contract with a pharmacy if they had a PharmD on staff. So I was like the token PharmD, which was great. I mean,
it's good.
Whatever. It was a great job.
A win is a win. A win is a win.
A win is a win. And that drug me into long-term care pharmacy, where I spent the rest of my career before coming here to ASCP 6 years ago. So it's been an incredible ride. And I think, again, pharmacy has so much in front of it. Yeah. We have to remember who we are, help people make good decisions, even if those decisions mean we make a little bit more money on the product. I mean, If it's the best drug for you, it's the best drug for you.
Yeah.
We need to lean into that a little bit more. But I think, we're still in a good place, and it's going in the right direction.
That's good. That's good. Wow. All right. Well, good. And now everyone got to. You are infamous in the industry, but I don't think everyone knows the story, the origin story. It sounds like it wasn't love; it was a lack of options at times.
That's exactly right, like everything else.
That's how I got Marcia, my wife, my beautiful wife. Everybody knows when they meet her. Like I totally married above my station. I just tell everybody it was just like it was a lack of options. Is that right? Here I am. Sometimes winning by default, still winning.
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
All right. Before you go, I always do another segment. It's called Prescribeables. It's just a question of like, what are you watching, reading, listening to, or just doing that you're into right now? You think you could the listeners or viewers of this would be into?
Yeah, I'll stick in healthcare. Like I just read a book called Metabolical by Robert Lustig.
Okay.
And it kind of goes through the history of how we evolved our guidance on nutrition, where it came from, all the mistakes that we've made, where we are today. It has a lot of parallels, I think, to the pharmaceutical manufacturing industry in terms of risk and quality and all kinds of things. But it's fascinating read. And I do think there's an element out there like nutrition is food, food is medicine.
Mm-hmm.
How do we educate people to do things better when it comes to dietary habits? It's a great book. It's worth reading. It's a little horrifying, but it's a good book. And who knows? We may end up incorporating that into the keynote at our meeting in November, is talking about food as medicine, just to give that other little aspect to what we do as providers of healthcare.
That's cool. Mine is going to be your podcast. We will put it in the show notes. For folks that watch or listen to this one, Chad hosts. Y'all have a pretty regular cadence, I think. Every week, or y'all? Yeah. Every week, y'all
we drop an episode every week. It's the second year we've done it. What I like about it is we're trying to expose innovators, people from history in pharmacy, to our younger, group out there, our students. People that are looking at this profession and saying, do I even get into this profession? You have to hear from the people that did it the last generation, that kind of were the entrepreneurs, and they took the risks, and listen to what their stories are around risk, so that you can feel like what you might be doing, or you might want to do, and take a little bit of the fear out of it. So we have a good time with it. I have a partner on it, Tom Hansel, that worked on the technology space for a while. He's a pharmacist. He also worked in long-term care. So it's just a good time, and we really get to expose and amplify a lot of pharmacists out there that are doing great stuff.
Good stuff. All right, cool. Well, we will we'll put that in the show notes, called Our Experience. You can find it wherever you can find all of your podcasts, and it's on YouTube too. I think y'all film it, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
We do.
The one I watched, I was watching on YouTube, so it's good. All right, Chad. Well, dude, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it. Appreciate what you're doing and what ASCP is doing for everyone. Real quick plug. In November is y'all's annual conference. Is that right?
That's right. We'll be at the Gaylord Rockies in Denver, Colorado, November 7th through 10th.
Oh man! Tag on the ski season, and once you go to that, go hit the slopes. God, that's a good spot.
Yeah.
All right. Good deal. All right. Well, hey, Chad, thanks so much for your time. Thanks for being on.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody. See you.
Thanks for being with us today, everybody. This is our pharmacy podcast for long-term care. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Please subscribe and continue to listen for great conversations around long-term care and how to elevate your pharmacy.